government will not overspend, regardless of the fact that we are an election year. We are in an election year. How is that going?
Well, that's going very well. I had indicated that at the media budget review, we're not going to ask for a supplementary budget. And indeed, we have gone according to that. As I speak to you, we are within limits. So as far as our target for primary balance for the year 2024 is concerned, by end of June, and also based on the review that was done by the IMF, for example, we are around 0.2% in terms of our primary balance. Our target was around 0.4%. So that tells you that we have more than, if you want, achieved. So as far as our domestic primary balance is concerned, and we are very much on course to achieving the 0.5% that we have set for 2024. So indeed, we have stayed within limits. We have stayed within the 2024 budget, and that is a very good signal going forward that we are not supposed to be incurring deficits, by the end of 2024.
One thing that the finance minister talks about is us not overspending despite being in an election year. We have maintained fiscal discipline despite being in an election year. Did the government really have a choice? Because the IMF is actually on our case, isn't it?
Well, I think that, yes, I agree with you that the IMF has been around, but it also requires discipline, because what that would mean is that after every staff level review, if we were not disciplined, then you would hear that Ghana is not meeting the targets that have been set under the program, whether it's the quantitative performance criteria, or it is the indicative targets, or even the structural reforms. But all of the reviews that have taken place so far does indicate that Ghana has been very much on course. So as far as attaining these particular targets is concerned. In fact, if we were not meeting the targets, some of these targets would have simply been outlined as delayed targets. That would simply mean that even though they could give you the go-ahead in accessing whatever you are supposed to access within that particular review window, that they'll put it out there that so-and-so targets have not been met, and that would mean that by the next review, they will expect you to meet those targets. And when those targets are not being met, instead of having a 3-year program, for example, you would have it being extended by another year or even by another 2 years. And that has happened in our history before. So if we have remained disciplined, it should not just be down to the fact that the IMF is around, and that is why these targets are being met. I think that we have to commend ourselves for all of us working together as a nation to ensure that we have stayed the course so as far as the implementation of the program is concerned.
What would you say to those who would say that we didn't really have a choice because we are in dire need and we had no option than to stick to the requirements that were given to us by the IMF because our economy was in a precarious situation?
Well, as I've indicated, for example, in an election year, you know that the history has always been government overspending. And that would often happen because the political party in government would want to put itself in an advantage towards winning an election. And you need to go through all the election cycles. It doesn't matter whether the IMF is around or not, but that has often been the case. So if for the very first time in our history, we are seeing a government in an election year that really would want to win this election, but at the same time working with the IMF and staying the course of whatever the targets, whatever the indicators are, it shouldn't just be dismissed that we didn't have a choice but to do what we are doing. I mean, we had to be disciplined at all times whether it is in the past, it is the present, or it is in the future, be it the presence of the IMF or not. So if we are beginning to see that particular discipline, I think we need to commend ourselves and to assure ourselves that going forward, that is how it should be. So as far as economic governance is concerned, and that's basically what the Akufo-Addo government has been doing in this last year. The last time I was in the studio, I did indicate that the Akufo-Addo government was going to do everything possible to ensure that by January of 2025, when it is handing over a very healthy, a very strong, and a very robust economy that was not going to leave a very difficult situation for any government that was going to take over. And so far, that is what the books are showing. So far, that is what the indicators are showing. So I think that shouldn't just be treated that, okay, the IMF is around and you don't have a choice. I think that we need to commend ourselves and to assure ourselves that once the indicators are where they are, we have to continue to pursue those fiscal consolidation measures to bring about sustainable macroeconomic stability and then engineer the kind of economic growth that we all want to be able to create the jobs, increase people's incomes, and have the welfare of the good people of this country going forward.
Now, one of the things that the finance minister said is in relation to those who lost monies during this whole process of restructuring the economy, and among others. He says that in a year or two they would make their monies back. But some of the analysts and then pensioners we've spoken to, they are not taking too kindly to that assurance, because they say that, look, when it comes to money, there's something called time value of it. So what the money is worth in 2024 or 2023 will not be the same in terms of what it is worth in 2025 and 2026. They say that they expect more remorse coming from government in relation to this issue, and that this assurance does not appease them in any way.
Well, I think we have consistently said so. I mean, we have consistently indicated that we do sympathize with all persons who had to suffer various haircuts in respect of the domestic debt exchange program. But what government has also ensured is to remain committed to whatever timelines, whatever schedule they are, as far as the payments of any maturing restructured bonds are concerned, and that we have been very, very consistent. So there's no game denying the fact that the whole process was painful and perhaps...
Hello, Doc. I'd have to reestablish contact with Dr. Ganiu. He is with the Ministry of Finance. He's a technical advisor. I would get him so that we can conclude the conversation in relation to the economy. The Ministry of Finance as well, which is by extension government, they are pleased with the state of affairs with regard to the economy. But the analysts share different opinions. I mean, they are not as optimistic as the government is. We are re-establishing contacts with Dr. Abdul Ganiu. He is a technical advisor at the Ministry of Finances. We've been able to get him back. Yes, Doctor, you were talking about how you appreciate the concerns of these individuals affected.
Exactly. So that's the point. And the finance minister has consistently made that point. Anytime he's gotten the opportunity to address the good people of this country through the media, he has often indicated that government continue to sympathize with them. Government appreciates their feelings, the pains, and whatnot that they have had to go through. But it's also always given the assurance that whatever terms that have been agreed upon, government would ensure that we go by those schedules. So if you look at the schedule, we have consistently made those payments as and when they mature. So we're just hoping that we never are going to return to this again. And that will mean that we have to build a very strong economy, an economy that people have confidence in. And at any point in time when people are making investments, they are assured of the return that they do expect. And those are all measures that we are currently putting in place. And when you talk about an election year, for example, that you would have expected government spending to go over the roof, as has happened in the past, all of the indicators show that government stays tight. So as far as our spending within the budget is concerned, that is the assurance going forward. That's as long as, excuse me to say, is a present, if you want, government, for example, going forward. I mean, we're going to ensure that at all times we stay within whatever fiscal consolidation measures that we have in place.
Now, you talked earlier, you spoke earlier about leaving behind a healthy economy. You said that from what the indicators are showing, you are on course to doing so. Then again, just before you came on, we were picking the thoughts of a financial analyst in relation to where our economy is at the moment. The concern generally is about how tough the year 2025, 2026 going forward is going to be, or are going to be, because of the postponement of our debts. And the repayments, most of them would happen around that period of time. And there are other concerns about some debts that we have behind, especially in the energy sector, some of the projects that are ongoing, which are categorized as contingent liability. All these, when they come together, does not paint a too good of a picture for our economy going into those years. What do you say in response to that?
Well, I think that what we need to be more concerned about is the growth of the economy. Once the economy is growing, that will mean that you are in a position to build enough capacity that will be able to address some of these challenges that others may foresee. So, for example, you look at the 2024 growth figures so far. By end of 2023, we had projected a growth of about 2.8% for the year 2024. Indeed, given the positive strides that are being made in economic growth, we had to review that to 3.1% at some point. And as we speak, together with all our development partners, the IMF, the World Bank, we have reviewed the growth target to 4.2%. So gradually, we are getting to a stage where we will begin to record economic growth that will be similar to how we were growing pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, the average growth was around 7%. So if we are beginning to grow at 4% by end of 2024, and perhaps 5% or more by end of 2025, that clearly would indicate that you would have the ability to be able to take up some of these financing arrangements that people may foresee. And that's a critical point. And then if you look at also the debt restructuring, the fact that we have had a moratorium also means that we have to also begin to build the internal capacity so that by the time these debts are due for servicing, we have what it takes to be able to service them. And we should also forget that there's going to be an extended period for the repayment of these debts. Some of them going as far as 2037, if you look at the Eurobonds, for example. So there should be really no cause for alarm. And if you look at the quantitative performance criteria, you look at the indicative targets, you look at the various structural reforms that are being put in place, the energy sector, how we can get our cocoa sector beginning to perform again, so on and so forth. I believe that from 2025, indeed, the Akufo-Addo government will be handing over a healthy economy to the next government. So, yes, there will be challenges. We have to prepare for them. I do not think that...
Are you preparing for them?
Yeah, but that's the point I'm making. So that debt service moratorium, especially in respect of the bilateral loans, for example, would mean that we are going to resume the servicing of these debts after 2026. So within that period, what are you supposed to be doing? You have to begin to build the necessary buffers so that when the debts are due for servicing, you'll be able to do so. And within this period, government surely should be able to put those structures in place.
Okay.
That is a period of about 3 years, for us to be able to do so. So that's the point I'm making. So coupled with the fact that you continue to grow the economy, once you have a bigger pie, then obviously everybody can benefit from that. That's simply what the growth of the economy is. So taxes should be able to improve once you are growing at a much higher rate. Employment should improve once you are growing at a much higher rate, and all of that. And all of these will begin to have an effect on your ability to service both your domestic and your external debt. So really going forward, I can see a very positive trajectory.
Okay, and you made reference to growth a lot of the times, and where exactly are we recording the growth? Because for many of the analysts, that is where the concern is.
Well, the industrial sector is growing, and that is highly significant. If you look at 2023, for example, in the first, second, and I think third quarters, industry was contracting. It was not growing as we expected. It was in the last quarter that we saw some positive growth in the industrial sector. But if you look at from January up to date, the economic growth has been largely spurred by the growth that we have recorded in industry. And in the past, services was always leading the growth to a very large extent. So if you're beginning to see industry growing, that clearly is an indication that we are in the right direction. Agriculture has also grown quite significantly in the last 2 quarters. We are waiting for the third quarter figures from the Ghana Statistical Service, and we expect impressive growth across all the sectors of the economy.
Okay, and my final question to you is that the government has set some 18% target for end year inflation. Do you think you'll be able to meet that? As of October, it was 22%.
Yes,
it increased from 21 point something percent. Do you think you'll be able to meet it?
Yeah, we've had to revise that. We've had to revise that. At the beginning, we were looking at between 15 to 17%. So basically around that figure. But looking at the fact that we've had inflation, even though inflation has been halved, if you look at it from 54% to about 22% now, but somewhere around, I think in August, for example, we saw inflation inching up a little bit from the 20 or so percent that we had recorded earlier. So that has had us to really do a review of the end year inflation target. So we brought it to about 18%, and I think that it's about a month or so to the end of the year. By the time the Ghana Statistical Service comes out with the 2024 indicators and where we are, I believe that inflation would have been around the 18% mark.
All right. Thank you very much for speaking to us. We're grateful for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
You heard us speak to Dr. Abudu Abdul Ganiu. He's a technical advisor at the Ministry of Finance, speaking to us in relation to the projections government has, and also getting some reactions from him with regard to the concerns that analysts have with the state of the country's economy. This is the Morning Star here on Star 103.5 FM.
Well, it's a mental warfare.